The J. Michael Show.
Welcome to the show. Today's guest is Martha Hazzard Decker, and her book is Haunted Hill House. This is a house in Mineral Wells, Texas.
Right.
And it's haunted.
Very.
Welcome to the show. Thank you for being my guest.
Sure.
I want you to tell me about this house.
That house is an encyclopedia.
Uh-huh.
The house was built 1860s, 1870s.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost catty corner to the Baker Hotel, which is an infamous hotel in Mineral Wells. And actually, this house has 3 wells. Pretty sure there's 3 wells on their property, and they were the first wells in Mineral Wells. There's a couple of businesses in town that tried to claim that theirs were the first, but Haunted Hill House, and they got its name because
there are mineral wells in Mineral Wells.
And of course it's Mineral Wells, but
right.
The people in town used to call it the haunted house on the hill. So it was kind of Hill House all along. And the man that they bought the house from started calling it Haunted Hill House.
What specifically happens in this house that people thought it was haunted?
A lot of stuff. There's
Okay.
been murders in the house. There's been natural deaths in the house. There are portals in the house. I had missing time in the house at one point.
You yourself?
Yeah.
Missing time.
And the house, the hill behind it is called East Mountain, and they have West Mountain. You know, they're just big hills. But they own all the way up to about 22 feet from the top. And anybody that's interested in treasure, that mountain behind their house that's part of their property is one of the possible places that Sam Bass hid his gold.
Wow. I want to read a little on the back
Sure.
of your book here. It says, the house was built around 1880 and is now the site of serious paranormal activity. There are children's giggles, growls, hisses, and scratches. There have been a number of deaths at this location. The house is listed by many sites as the #1 most haunted house in the U.S.
Correct.
Wow. And it is in Mineral Wells, Texas. Okay, so you've obviously been in this house a lot.
Quite a bit. The current owners bought the house in 2018 in spring, and I met them in fall. And a good friend of mine is a friend of theirs, and she's actually the psychic for the house, Maria Elena Santos Kemp. She lives down in Austin. But she's associated with the house, and they just call her the house psychic. And then Donna McCauley is associated with the house. She is actually the historian for the house, and she's a historian for Weatherford and for Parker County.
Okay.
And she has dug up all kinds of documentation. So it's not just stories that are passed on.
Right.
They started with the information that the previous owner had, that Phil had. And we've since then, tossed out stuff that wasn't factual and added stuff.
Right.
When we give the names of some of the murdered children, we know where they're buried. We've found them on census records.
Yeah.
And so it's really fascinating how much actually comes with the house.
So is this a location where ghost hunters will come and they do EVP, electromagnetic tests of the house?
They do that, but there is so much audible stuff in there, and there's touching, and there's pushing, and there's scratching, and the growling. I have probably spent the night alone in that house more than anybody.
Wow.
And I think the only reason I could do that was
tell me some things that's happened to you.
Well, so when I was working on this book, the summer before it was published, I went and spent 3 days at the house. The first night I was there, and I was recording like a journal of everything, and it was really mild, just residual activity the first day, first night. You can hear, I stay in one room that's right by the front door and the stairs to go upstairs. And I keep the door open. I keep the door open into the living room so I can hear everything. So you hear all the residual. You hear people going up and down the steps from when it was a brothel. You hear people walking upstairs. You hear people almost like a party in the living room. Stuff you can't discern what they say,
right?
But you can hear them. I've had the piano bang around when I'm there by myself in the past. I've had so Toby.
Who's Toby?
Toby is somebody that the family that lived there for about 20 years, the teenagers supposedly brought Toby in or conjured him or whatever you want to call him through a Ouija board.
Okay.
But Toby is some form of demonic or that type thing. And he just stays at the house. He doesn't always, because he will follow people sometimes. Yeah. Usually if somebody does some harm to the house or steals something, or they don't want to get blessed because Kathy and Sonny, the owners, will bless them with oil, and she'll also put it on their vehicle before they leave, and some people don't want that. So Toby...
So if you don't do that, Toby could follow you home.
Yeah, of course, he could really follow you whenever.
Right.
People often will have dreams about the house, sometimes before they even go there.
Wow.
Sometimes they have dreams after. So I was there spending those days there, and it was nice and calm, nice and relaxing, because there's little children that are there, but there's annoying stuff. But you got Toby, and you've got scratches and other things, because things come and go over there. And fall, it starts ramping up quite a bit. And this was the worst fall of all.
This past fall?
Yes, it was.
What happened?
Well, we were there. Okay, let me finish my other thing with Toby.
Okay,
so Toby, was calm, but before I did that, was in the house alone and was almost asleep, not quite, kind of in that twilight area. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, I get this big old growl, loud in my ear. I didn't react. I didn't look. I just went to sleep. So it was almost like a game, like kids will keep poking at you till you react.
Right.
So several months later, I was there alone. And I just lay down. And as I did, it was like we were nose to nose, like I could almost feel the spittle from the growl.
Wow.
On my face. I mean, and I didn't react. I ignored it.
So they're trying to get a reaction out of you.
Yeah, so that was more of a reaction, because that was like right then, and I just ignored it. So when I was staying there at the house working on the book, the second night, I'm about to fall asleep. Mm-hmm. It's very calm. I turn off the TV. I close up my computer, and I go in. But before I go in the room, now there's a curtain between the kitchen and the hall in the house. And I heard the loudest. I mean, it was the loudest. You could put a combination of hiss, roar, growl, scream, whatever, all together in one. It was like Toby was leaning over the banister upstairs, and the whole house vibrated. It was so loud. The house vibrated. And I was like, okay.
And you're sure, or you assume that Toby is a demon?
Well, yeah, through research and things, that's a given.
Now, by demon, are you saying that, I'm trying to define that as a very evil person, or he was in real life an evil person?
No, because if it was human, then it wouldn't be demonic.
Right, it wouldn't be growling.
Toby is not human.
Right.
And Toby is very old.
I mean, you give it a name like Toby, it sounds like he's a fun little character.
But that's the name that the people gave him. And so they've kept the names of the rooms and all that stuff the same. And that was the kids that grew up there for 20 years. And then when Phil got the house, he just kept everything. And so when Kathy and Sonny got the house, they just maintained. We just corrected some of the history and added a lot more to it.
Right.
But when he did that, of course, the adrenaline went through the roof.
Right.
Because I was so relaxed. And I get up and I'll like run to the doors, throw up that curtain, and I holler up there, and I'm hollering, I mean, real loud. I go, yeah, I heard you, Toby. So what? What do you want?
Wow.
Like, so what? And so the adrenaline's going, and I had talked to Kathy maybe 15 minutes earlier. So I'm going, the kitchen's by the front door. So I'm going to go sit out on the porch and just kind of let the adrenaline
calm down. Yeah.
And I call Kathy, but there's a security camera on the door, so when I go by, it triggers it. And by the time I got Kathy on the phone, Sonny got his alert, and there was an EVP on it. They get like almost like prophecies off of some of these security cameras. It's weird. It's really weird.
So they have microphones on the security
cameras. Yeah, on the
cameras.
security ones. They have cameras, over 20 cameras. Like everything has cameras but the bathrooms, but there's only a few of them that have the audio. Yeah. And what they picked up was, look, Toby made her turn red. He'll get her later.
Oh, wow.
And so that scared them.
Yeah.
So there's somebody that comes in. Julie would clean sometime, and then her son Ryan sometimes is, if they want an investigator with people that go there, he'll come and, for a fee and stay. So they came, but I was not investigating while I was there. The whole point was to see what it would be like to live there day to day. And so when they came over, he wanted to investigate something. No, you cannot investigate. I don't want to change the atmosphere in the house. Right. And so they were there, and everything was fine. Everything was quiet, because that's what I did. I heard you, so, what's your point? I'm not going to run like a lot of people do and leave. Some people will drive up to the house. They can't even get out of their car.
Wow.
And they go stay in a hotel for the night.
Has Toby ever seriously hurt anyone?
No, not Toby, but there's something else in the house. There's several other things that have appeared. There's I guess a friend of mine who does really good cold readings had told me about this guy, but I had already encountered him. I was sitting upstairs one summer. I was the only one in the house. There were some workers outside doing some construction stuff. And I had like a bionic ear type thing on, and I was up in what's Joshua's room, and in the back is where Joshua was murdered in this house.
Okay.
His uncle murdered him. So I sit there, and he, like, where he played and stuff was behind a wall, in this room. So I'm just kind of listening to sounds, and I start hearing, and this was a new thing, like heavy boots, like you're walking like you're really ticked off.
Right.
Back
like
and
you're
forth.
Stomping.
Yeah, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it's like, oh, I haven't heard that before. And at one point, I finally said, okay, because it was getting like more and more irritated. I could tell by just, the sounds, that I went and found Kathy to make sure that it wasn't somebody working on the house. That was, that noise was coming from them, and it wasn't. They were on the opposite side of the house. And so a friend of mine has said that there's an enforcer there. Now, they own the land on the next lot.
An enforcer.
Enforcer. So the house that was next to them was torn down right before they bought the house. The city tore it down.
Right.
And they removed the pipes. I mean, they went down deep. But that house, both that house and this house are supposed to have basements.
Right.
And we think we know where the basement is in this house, but they'd have to tear up a lot of stuff to find it.
It's been like floored over or walled off or something?
Trying to find the entrance to it, and we think where the entrance is out on the back porch, which they have made into a room now that with a thick concrete, so they would have had to tear all that up.
Right.
But
man, can you imagine if somebody got in there and could find some interesting things that's in that basement?
We think there's some bodies in the basement. We just have a feeling, because there was some stuff going on with the man, the family that lived there for 20 years. Their grandfather, the lady's father, had the house, and he did a lot of dark stuff. I've been told this by family members and then other people that grew up, in Mineral
So you
Wells.
think he put the bodies in?
There's several bodies
basement.
in the basement.
Well, what would it take? What would it take for someone to excavate that area? You said it might tear the house down,
Well,
but
no, not tear the house down, but you'd have to tear out a floor.
yeah, you'd have to.
And yeah, they bought the house, they leveled the house, they painted the outside, they painted the inside. It's got a new roof, so they're constantly putting money in trying to preserve, the house.
Wow.
And there's a couple places because there's false fireplaces in the house. And there's one in the room that's called the scratch room, and the scratch room is where all the scratches used to. People would get the scratches.
That they would scratch. It would scratch a person.
Yes.
Okay, it's not scratches on the wall. It's,
No, on people.
Would they bleed?
Not well. Sometimes they would.
It would just whelp up.
But mostly it would just turn red, and they said it kind of felt like like a little like a spider, something really light, going across. And I watched the first time I was at the house.
Hair on my arm is standing up.
Well, the first time I was there, it was for an event, and they had when she would do the tours, you'd put say a docent in each one of the rooms, and there would be different paranormal equipment. But we talk about why the room was named what it was, or a little bit of stuff, and they would run through the house in groups of about 5 to 8 people in each room, and then they go around and get all the stuff. We do that several times, and then she'd let them, they turn them loose for the last 30 minutes or so to wander, through the house as they wanted to investigate on their own. But I think it was last year in the scratch. Well, when I first met them, Kathy told me that there's been 75 documented scratches in the scratch room. That's why it's called the scratch room. Well, in my head, I'm being polite. I've just met them. I'm like, my like law enforcement mind's going and all this stuff, and I'm, rolling my eyes in my head, and I'm going, yeah, right. Well, that night I saw 24 people get scratched.
Wow.
And some of them, they go, can I ask? I said, I don't care. It's your body.
Yeah.
And they would ask, and they would get scratched. There were a couple of juvenile delinquents that came through. They got some deep gouges.
Goodness.
They tried to steal. Somebody had done a ghost walk through town before they started coming in the house, and the tip money was in the living room, a big jar, and they started to steal that. And they got in the house because they thought they were with some people that were parents, but
they weren't with them.
They weren't. Yeah. And what they ended up stealing was a book, not this book, but I had written a book called Paranormal Profiling. And I had given that to her because I didn't have this book yet. And they stole that book. And that book is a basic how to interview people and look for signs of deception. I'm in the process of revising that and updating it.
Your background was law enforcement.
Right.
Okay.
Law enforcement and journalism.
Right. Okay.
So I use a combo of both.
And they stole the book.
It's like, those kids aren't going to like that book.
Wow. Okay. So has like Ghostbusters or someone come into the house to
there's like, if you go to YouTube and you just put in Haunted Hill House,
right,
there's a lot of the big YouTube shows,
right,
the bigger ones that they've done shows there. When Paul Beeben, he used to do Mission Declassified, and then he did at least one season, I don't know how many, where he changed it to Paranormal Declassified.
Okay, just I want to ask, has anything been filmed to happen in the room, some sort of paranormal activity?
Oh, well, because they have cameras running all the time.
Right.
So they have quite a bit of stuff they pick up. And so he was there, and I would tell people that's probably the best one to watch for stuff that's not, there's no added stuff. It was all legitimate. Twin Paranormal, they're obviously twins, and they're kind of funny, but they've been at the house, and they haven't faked anything there, and they could see because they have all the cameras. Some of the bigger shows that come, they'll have them turn that system off.
Right.
While they're there. Portals to Hell was there, and I was, so I've been on Travel Channel with some of these, and Tim Wood will be there in May mid-May, I will be at that event. There's one where it's the last tour that they're doing at the house, evening tour from like 8 to midnight. And there won't be another one till fall at the house. And they probably have maybe 20 or so.
But they've picked up these things on camera. They've seen apparitions or something?
Yes. Yeah. We have seen, we have heard. I mean, there's a lot of audible stuff in the house.
Right.
And
when you see something like that and they caught it on camera, are you able to say, oh, well, that was Toby, or that was this little girl, or that one? You're able to identify them?
When they go with the EVPs, I can, or even if it's audible but it's recorded, Toby has a distinct sound.
Yeah.
And he almost sounds like he's mechanical or something. So when we were filming, Nick Groff has a show called Death Walker.
Okay.
And so he was there. He's supposed to be coming back. So we were filming. They were interviewing me in the living room. And the scratch room was behind me and open. And it was Nick, and then he had his cousin as the cameraman. But as we're getting ready to wrap up, we hear a little hiss. But then there was the big hiss. Oh. And both of them, their eyes bug out. And I just go, that was Toby. And he almost sounded like one of those air freshener things that just commercial ones that or something.
Yeah.
And but it's Toby. He has that mechanical sound, and it always sounds the same. I was there for some event one night, and I didn't feel well, so I went and laid down in the Axe room. And you have a bathroom on one end, but there used to be an open door there too that would go into a little space before you go into the scratch room. And I must have heard that a dozen times, because it was one of those I had to just lay down and close my eyes. I couldn't have them open. I get dizzy, kind of thing. And I heard that, and I heard the get out at least a dozen times.
Oh goodness!
And I just ignore it.
Wow. What started you interested in this?
Well, I've been around paranormal activity since I was probably about 4, and I've investigated for 30 years or so. Yeah, so, when I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, and when as a teenager, there's nobody there to mentor or to do anything, so I was an avid reader, so I read everything that Hans Holzer wrote. I read everything that I could find about Edgar Cayce, and of course all the books that the Warrens did back then. And there was one other guy, and I can't think of his name, but I read everything I could find on that. And that's how I kind of learned. And there would be a lot of activity sometimes would ramp up between me and the girl I ran around with in high school. And when that happened, we knew enough to know that if things got serious, things could get bad.
Right.
And then we didn't really know what we were doing, so, we would just kind of step away, and there wouldn't be anything. Then, a little while later, we would start, doing things and trying to find, we were trying to find information. There were some really weird things that happened at that time.
So walk me through. You're going to the house. Walk me through how you conduct an investigation.
Well, if I'm conducting a heavy-duty, serious investigation, I conduct it almost like I would a crime scene.
Right.
You do it the same way. And, it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Like when I go to Hill House, I don't investigate anymore because I know who's there. I know what's there. We just sometimes have direct communication. We'll go with Willie, who had the house. Willie is the one that killed Joshua, and then Joshua's mother shot her. She tried to protect her son, and Willie was her uncle, and she got raped. And so you can go into the scratch room and you can play cards with Willie.
Really?
Yeah. People sit there and they'll play poker, and they'll put a hand down for Willie, and there's like a little bottle of whiskey or something they have right there, and they'll ask like, what do you want to do? And they're using some type of a spirit box or something,
right?
And they'll And
He'll tell them what
yeah,
card to play.
Yeah. I was doing that one night with one of the tours going on, and there was the people that were in there, and we got no responses, so I was doing terrible plays. And this one lady, she won every time. And every time the game, I mean, as soon as it was done, she won. You'd hear this cuss word come out at her every single time.
He wasn't happy he was losing.
No, it was hilarious. I mean.
So, as a crime scene investigator, you come to conclusions based on the clues there. So, what are your conclusions on Haunted Hill House?
It's very active.
It's very active.
It is very, yeah.
It's definitely haunted.
Absolutely.
If a person went to the house, say tonight, are they guaranteed some sort of activity?
Pretty much. Pretty much. Activity happens around the clock, 7 days a week at this house. It's constant. But if some people come in and they're like a bump on a log and they have no energy.
Or they're a skeptic.
Well, no, not even that. But mostly if they just have no energy and they're just like bumps, you know.
Yeah.
They get things, but they don't, it's residual. They don't really get stuff. But if you come in kind of high energy, or if you're not a nice person and you come in, you can get all sorts of activity.
If you're not a nice person. So they apparently, you're reading them and their energy. They're reading your energy. They know who you are and what you are.
They have picked up stuff on the cameras with the audio. Somebody walks by and they call them out. You know, they don't hear it, but it's on the audio on the security. And it's, you know, they'll say something, whether it's somebody having an affair, somebody doing drugs. I mean, all sorts of things like that.
And they just literally say it, right?
Yeah. I had a guy that was with one of the groups, and of course you stay with your same group, and he was really kind of a jerk. And this group of people, this was the last time they'd been in through a few times, but he was just being a jerk. And in the scratch room, they always put me in that room. There's a very small closet. It's not even deep enough to put a hanger. And there's a false back behind it, and the fireplace next to it is false back too. And there's space in there, and there's not a doorknob on the inside of the closet, but there's still that little piece
that little
you can turn.
Thing. Yeah.
You can turn it, and sometimes people can't get out of there. Well, I kind of, shamed his manhood or something. So he went in there. And then he couldn't get out.
And then he got nervous.
Well, he couldn't get out. It was the last one. Everything was all done. So everybody else was in the kitchen because that's the command center and it has all the cameras. And they were all watching us. And they saw him go in there and they couldn't hear anything. And they were all said when he couldn't get out, they were all like high-fiving because he had been a jerk through the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so when I let him out, here I said something about, he got it, and there was an EVP because I do have one of the security cameras in there, and it said something, ugly about him. Yeah, I was like, I go, something about he got it. It goes, yeah, in the butt, but a little different.
Yeah.
So the house can be fun. In the scratch room, that fake fireplace, looking for the basement, there's actually a well under that part of the house. And so Kathy and then Donna, who's the historian, they start pulling up bricks and everything and going down in there. And they've gone down quite deep, but when they were there was about 5 of us in the room too, watching them. And as they start doing that, and they're trying to see what's down there without damaging, but pull out as much stuff, the floor in there was akin to if this had been an upstairs apartment, and your downstairs one is like slamming the broom handle because you're being too noisy. Right. We were getting that like boom, boom
from underneath
the floor, and the whole floor was vibrating as just boom, boom, and it's like, okay, does that mean yes, you're getting closer? Don't come.
It might mean quit that.
So we didn't know what was done, and so Beyond Oak Island came and filmed an episode on the with the gold stuff. And so Gypsy Jules, she goes by, is a metal detector person. She works with law enforcement, but it's all professional.
Right.
And so she has found some interesting artifacts in that house outside and around. But she was down in there, trying to find out stuff too. And it's probably over 8 foot deep now.
Wow.
To get down in there. Everything's been pulled out and cleaned out.
But there's that bumping that they don't want you in there.
I don't know which. We don't know how it was meant.
Right.
We couldn't find out, but it definitely activated something.
Yeah, something was not happy you were in there.
Yeah.
Okay, so Haunted Hill House, Where Spirits Speak. Martha Hazzard Decker. If someone wants to read this book, where can they get it?
Amazon.
Amazon
and
has
probably other, some other.
Yeah. Let's make sure that we can
sites
see that.
like that.
Yeah. Then you have Toby photo by Stacy. There's a photo on the back that's Toby.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard to see, but Toby, she took that with a GoPro.
You'd have to get the book to see the image that we're talking about here, but it is kind of spooky. It's on the back of the book. I would love to go. We used to have a flute festival in Palo Pinto, which is near Mineral Wells,
right.
And I've been through Mineral Wells several times, and but I didn't know that this house was there, and it is so interesting to know that it is there.
Well, there's tunnels between it and the baker, just like there's tunnels between the baker and the church.
Why were there tunnels?
So they could get to this house during Prohibition.
Right.
And with it being a brothel too. And there's talks about the babies from some of the women. They could, because you had very, wealthy people would go stay at the hotel.
Right.
For the mineral baths. And they would buy the babies.
They would buy them.
And they could take them,
and then sequester them off somewhere.
And they're going through the tunnels. Those tunnels are large enough to put a car into.
The tunnels are there now, and you can go in them.
If you ask the city, they don't exist. But in the mid-'80s, they brought a lot of the cars out.
There were cars in there.
Yeah, they brought the cars out, and the city actually auctioned the cars off in the 80s.
Wow. How old were the cars?
Old.
Oh, very old.
Yeah, they were old because they would have been like during Prohibition.
Right.
There was a lot
of
talk about with mineral wells and occult activity. And there's somebody that Kathy has talked to whose father was either an engineer for the city or for the hotel. I'm not sure which. But if the city says there's no tunnels. He has the blueprints. He's passed, and I think his son has those, but has the blueprints. And also a picture of this lady and her brother playing in one of the cars in the tunnel.
In the tunnel.
Tunnel. And she said that what was so weird to her as a child is the cars were full of personal effects. Suitcases, all this, whatever somebody came to. It was like a horror movie.
Incredible historical find there.
Yeah, but they, got rid of it all.
They just...
Yeah, get rid of those,
But they say the tunnels aren't there. But if you talk to somebody, you might be able to go in them. Have you done any?
Find them.
Have you done any ghost research in those tunnels?
No, because we can't get to them. We don't know. That's one of the things they've been looking for, and then I've helped on some of that is to find the entrance.
Right.
To the tunnels from the house. There's several
might be in that basement.
Yeah, it might be in the basement, and there's been a lot of add-ons on the house, so it's really hard to.
Yeah,
fine. Was it out there or was it outside? There's an area that when they bought, they were told that it was a barbecue pit. It was never a barbecue pit. It has a natural wall on one side and another wall that was, built by somebody with the old stones and everything. But it's just wide enough that it would make a good entrance to a tunnel.
Yeah. So, you could get a car out of it.
No, not that one. It's not that big.
Okay.
But, but I don't know. But they were putting cars in the tunnels. And that would have been, when she was out there, it probably would have been in the 50s. When this one lady and her brother would play in them.
Wow.
And then I talked to someone who worked at the city and was working there when they pulled the cars out and auctioned them off.
It sounds like the whole area is just fascinating and full of interesting historical things. And Haunted Hill House. There was a movie, Haunted Hill, or
something, but that has nothing to do with
it.
It
wasn't
house.
based on this house.
That's all fiction. This is
right. This is all
not
real.
Yeah.
Yeah. Paranormal Declassified and Death Walker with Nick Groff. This is a show that was done in the house.
Yeah, those are two different shows. Yeah. And there's been a number of shows.
Okay.
And Jack Osborne, when Portals to Hell was there, he still says to this day that is the scariest place he's ever been.
Wow.
It absolutely terrified him.
Wow. It says visitors witness orbs, EVPs are numerous, as are disembodied voices. The house has been featured on those shows. Disembodied voices. That's scary. That's like, wow. Okay, well, the Haunted Hill House, Martha Hazzard Decker, you are the author, and it's available on Amazon, and I'm sure you could probably just do a Google search and find other places that your book is there too.
Right.
And it's doing very well, and the house apparently is doing very well as well. I want to thank you so much, Martha, for being on my show. This is incredible. Oh, look, satellite antenna. That would be a new addition. Probably didn't have those back then. Martha, thank you so much.
Well, you're so welcome.
I appreciate you.
Sure.
We will see you next time on The J. Michael Show.
Goodbye.